This podcast is part of the Hungry Brothers Broadcasting Network.
Visit hungrybrothers.podcast.podbean.com to hear more of our content every week. Welcome to Hungry Dungeon, the D&D podcast where our food is home cooked and our content is home brewed. I am your host, the Burger Master, or Noe.
And I am your co-host, Half Pork, or Greg.
Heck yeah, and we're super excited to have you guys back this week. We got a lot of stuff planned, lots of questions. We have 3 segments that we're going through. And the first one is a new segment that we're starting and is going to be recurring every week.
Oh, yeah.
Our Fantasy Food of the Week.
Fantasy Food of the Week. So here's what we're doing. We're thinking of, like, if you were playing a D&D campaign, what would be the one type of food each week that, like, ooh, this sounds particularly good. So, like, traditionally your characters are carrying around, like, rations or other steaks and stuff from different places. And so I started thinking about what would be the fantasy centaur calf.
I'm sorry, what?
Centaur calf.
Centaur calf?
The calf of a centaur.
You know centaurs are like people, right?
I know what I said.
God, I don't know how I feel about this. Maybe you shouldn't be in charge of this.
It's like the veal of centaurs.
No, dude, you're thinking like, because I feel like venison is like a commonplace, right?
Venison is a commonplace food?
I think so. It's like a commonplace food.
Then let's get a little bit weirder.
Okay.
Centaur meat.
Dude, centaurs are people.
Okay.
That's like, you know what sounds great? Halfling.
Okay.
You know what sounds great? Orc forehead.
I'm still not seeing a problem.
There's so many problems here.
Okay. So the real answer that I'm going with is, you know how, like, in fantasy elements, just everything is, like, bigger?
Yeah.
Like, everything is just upscaled?
Heck yeah.
Big bacon.
Ooh.
Like, I'm genuinely...
Okay.
So I'm putting up a gesture here, and my hands are about 12 inches apart, and what, like, 4 inches wide?
Yeah, about 4 inches wide.
I want one strip of bacon this big.
Jeez. You know, would that still be considered bacon?
It's biggin.
Biggin.
What's the name of the animal?
Well, it'd probably come from pigs.
Is it a boar?
Boar.
Like a wild boar? I want boar bacon.
Boar bacon.
Boar bacon.
I am a fan of this. I think that sounds delicious. It's probably a little gamier.
Okay, ready?
Which makes it a little chewier.
Here's the kicker.
More gristle.
Boar bacon cooked in boar bun. Bourbon boar bacon.
It's sounding more ridiculous, but it sounds better and better.
Right?
Boar bacon. Bourbon boar bacon.
Bourbon boar bacon.
I think that sounds great.
It sounds like I'm doing one of those games where you replace the first letter of every word with
it really
one letter.
does, huh?
And I'm like, hey, you want the
Ew. So that's our fantasy food of the week.
Bourbon boar bacon.
Bourbon boar bacon.
You got to say it with the wrong inflections, though. Bourbon boar bacon.
Bourbon boar bacon.
Bourbon boar bacon.
Now served at your local tavern.
Ooh.
That's now a thing in our D&D world.
Our tavern?
In one of them.
Dude, the Hungry Brothers Tavern.
The Hungry Brothers Tavern?
Yeah.
Are we going to learn how to make bourbon boar bacon?
We should.
I think that'd be super cool.
But wait, no, you're saying this is going to exist. You finally are going to make versions of us in the D&D world.
Oh, shoot. The Hungry Brothers?
The Hungry Brothers that run their tavern.
The Hungry Dungeon.
The Hungry Dungeon.
I love it. I win. That's a win, dude. I'm such a fan of this.
The Hungry Dungeon. Where are you going to put it? I don't care. Tell me later.
I will tell you later. It's going to be... I'll know exactly where it's going to be.
Uh-oh.
It's going to be in the Vertalock.
Oh, okay.
Because you guys haven't been there.
Very cool.
I don't want any Esterlands.
Okay.
Because everything happens
Everything is in the Esterlands right now.
But I'm still fleshing out that part of the world right now, and I think that's a perfect, fun little tavern.
That's like a good starting point. You could build a town around that, dude.
Heck yeah, dude. A food-based town.
Excuse me. Yeah, food-based town.
Like a town that is like...
A town that is renowned for their
renowned
livestock.
for their cuisine.
Their livestock and their cuisine.
Ooh. And one of the most renowned taverns
is the Hungry Dungeon.
The Hungry Dungeon.
Is it a town of nothing but taverns?
No, that wouldn't sell. That wouldn't work.
Is it like a rest stop where you just get food?
Yes.
Like,
it's exactly what it is.
Is the Vertalock the Los Baños?
No. well, in our world, the Vertalock is like one of the trading epicenters of the continent.
Oh, okay. So this is the food place.
Yes. So logically, if you want exotic foods, you got to go places where there's exotic trade.
Dude, we should build the Hungry Dungeon in our Minecraft world.
Dude, you shouldn't have told me that. Oh, I'll get started right after this.
Great.
But yeah, that's our fantasy food of the week, guys.
Bourbon boar bacon.
Bourbon boar bacon.
Thank you for saying it like that.
And like every week, we're going to talk about a race, a D&D race that we're particular to this week. And
for some reason, we're staying little.
yeah, we've been staying little. We're probably going to keep this trend for a little bit.
Yeah, I like the little guys.
We're talking about halflings today. They're half the size, but double the fun.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Half the size, double the fun.
Heck yeah.
So here, let me tell you what I know about halflings.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anything that Tolkien told me in the book, The Hobbit.
Most of that stuff is accurate.
Great. And I think I actually used the word halfling a few times.
Yeah,
in The Hobbit.
They do. So halflings typically in folklore are like real small people. They're also called hobbits. They have hairy feet. They love nature. They like being peaceful. They're typically freedom-based things. So they're typically on your good alignment chart.
Okay.
Typically, they value freedom, which is chaotics. So, real nice.
I've yet to meet a mean halfling.
It's a stereotype. They exist.
Right.
But yeah, typically most halfling people, when people play halflings, they're usually real nice. At least in their little places and secluded.
When they're in their comfort zones.
Yeah, in their comfort zones, real nice.
Right.
I know that halflings are considered small creatures.
They are very small.
4 feet, I think.
At most.
I think so.
Usually
4 feet at most.
less.
Usually less.
Is there any like freakishly tall halflings? Like, has there ever been like a 5'5" halfling?
Dude, absolutely,
And
dude.
it's just-
I don't see why there wouldn't be.
And it's just the size of a smaller human, right?
Yeah.
But it's still a halfling, and it's like freakishly tall compared to all of its friends.
Yeah.
What if that's how they base their hierarchy?
Based off of height.
Based off of height alone, like the Urkins in Invader Zim.
Jeez.
Just like this halfling is the tallest, he will be our leader, but he's like stupid.
No. But I know that halflings also get they get an increase in their dex and I think their wisdom.
Really?
I think so. It's like 1 in each. And then they have 25 movement instead of 30.
And in addition to their hairy feet, they also get an extra feet.
They do. Halflings they get lucky and it's broken.
They do get lucky.
Yeah, the feet.
The feet lucky.
Yeah.
Lucky feet.
Yeah, it's broken. Meaning, for those of you uneducated D&D people, that you can re-roll any dice like 2 times per short rest.
If it's a natural 1. Right?
Yep.
That's what lucky is. You just get to... No, it has nothing to do with the short rest, doesn't it?
I think it has to do with the short rest.
Oh, yeah. I think
'Cause it needs to recharge.
Once per short rest, you can re-roll a natural 1. And if it's a natural 1 again...
You got to keep it.
You got to keep a natural 1. Right. Okay.
But I love them.
Dude, I'm going to play a halfling one of these days named Lucky Feet.
That'd be crazy. I know that in our world we have a little civilization of halfling.
It's Higgins McLucky Feet.
We have a little civilization of halflings.
We do. There's a couple, right?
Yeah, there's a couple. I don't think you guys have really run into any though.
No, other than the character I used to play who was a hermit.
He was a hermit. He lived on his own.
So he was alone.
But a little bit north of the Esterlands, on the border of the Telmari Wastes and the Esterlands, we still need to post our map, and we'll do so.
Oh, right.
But we have our there's like a little city on our map right in the corner along a mountain range, and that little civilization, all halflings. Every single one of them. And they live on the base of this waterfall. And they live in perpetual...
God, my throat.
They live in perpetual glory.
They live in perpetual smallness.
Yes, they're very small and very sweet.
And there's nothing else that lives there.
Throw back to my favorite halfling, Andra Timberwood.
Andra! That's concept producer Mac and Cheese's old character.
Yeah, she was great. She was a cleric of Lathander.
Oh, she was a cleric? Mm-hmm. I thought she was a ranger.
Nope, cleric of Lathander.
Oh, no, Dawn was a ranger.
Dawn was a ranger.
The wood elf.
She was a cleric of Lathander. She had
Dude, Lysander just sounds like you're talking about A Midsummer Night's Dream, and you don't know how to say Lysander. Yeah, the main character of Midsummer Night's Dream is Lysander, and he hangs out with a fairy named Puck.
But yeah, Andra was great. She was cute. She had this. She really liked big people.
Right, except for the dwarf. Wasn't he a dwarf?
Gorfin.
Gorfin
was her at. Wow.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on with my throat today.
It's a goblin. Throat goblins, they come for you.
So we're talking about throat goblins next week on Hungry Dungeon. Tune in.
Our next race is goblins. Stay tuned for next week where we talk about goblins and our favorite ones.
I'm not a gnelf. I'm not a gnoblin. I'm a gnome.
I'm a ganafling.
I'm a gnafling.
But yeah, Andra was great.
I'm a hobbit.
She served in the war with Goliaths and giants, and she
regularly stood on the Goliath's back, right?
Yes, regularly. She also had this really intense moment where she carried a Goliath with the power of her god to a cleric or to a temple to get them healed. It was intense.
That's incredible.
Sometimes you just get a nat 20, you know. Sometimes no. It was worse than that. Sometimes you roll 100% on your percentile die to get in contact with your god, and you roll a nat 20 in your straight check. And so she carried I think a 7'4"
Who was
Goliath.
Was it
Chief?
No, he was over 9 feet tall, wasn't he?
No.
Oh,
he was average height for a Goliath.
How tall is Rock?
Rock? I think 8 something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's big for Goliath.
He's a big boy.
He's 3/4 giant though.
Oh, okay.
It's just what I say. I don't know what he is.
We don't know what he is.
You guys don't.
I think he's the only one that knows what he is.
That's correct. I don't even know what he is, and I'm the dungeon master. But yeah, halflings. They're cute. They take rings to volcanoes.
Have you ever seen the video of the guys? It was on a PewDiePie video of the guys chilling in the swimming pool, and the music just changes. It pans on the guy looking like Smeagol mid transformation. Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
As a DM, someone who's deeply invested in this was a sneak preview to the rest of the episode. As a DM who's invested in the content, how faithful, or rather, how well does Tolkien mythology line up with the D&D mythology?
Well, I'd say the base races are similar.
Okay.
But the mythology and lore of Dungeons and Dragons is expansive
totally right?
and very different. So think of it this way: Tolkien, when he created his elves, based them off of it was this is my thing of what heaven looks like.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings is his treatise on what heaven is supposed to be, and his understanding of the Bible or whatever. And he builds the elves, and he writes his own literary language for that.
Oh, right. He created a full language.
He created a full language for his book. Dungeons and Dragons comes later in the 80s, right? Not later, earlier, right?
No.
80s is earlier than
80s is
Lord
much
of the Rings.
much later. Than
Much
Lord of the
later.
Rings.
Much
Much
later.
later.
Gosh, what the heck? Tolkien.
Tolkien be dead.
Yeah, Tolkien's dead.
When did Tolkien die?
It takes. I'm sure that a lot of the creatures take some inspiration from that, but the lore's very different with a lot of different gods, a lot of different things.
Well, and there's not much talk of deities in Lord of the Rings, is there? Also, for the record, Tolkien died in 1973, so much before D&D.
God bless his soul.
God rest his soul.
Yes. It's not Christmas, please. Please, not yet. Wait till November.
Okay, fair enough.
But let me put it like this: the worlds are very different. Think of there are 5 wizards, I think, in Tolkien. And they're like gods.
Yeah, I was gonna say
magic.
Tolkien generally refers to Gandalf as a deity.
Yes.
He's not a wizard. He is.
They're like gods.
He's a demigod.
And that's because they have magic.
Right.
Very different magic system for Dungeons and Dragons because magic is accessible
Pretty
to a lot of
commonplace.
things.
On the note of accessible magic, this is it reminds me of when we talked about it back in Nerd News. Frozen 2 just had a trailer drop,
Yeah, it did.
and it's
It
implying
looks like a D&D campaign,
It looks like a
doesn't it?
D&D campaign, and it's implying that magic could be something of a temptress for its users, and magic could have an evil motive behind it.
Yeah.
And so that's just where my brain went right now. But how interesting is that?
Yeah, it's super interesting, and there's a lot of stuff that you could do with that because if, like in our world, we have a deity
Right.
that resides over magic. She's
okay.
she's the god of magic.
That's cool.
She's the god of magic and the god of love.
Could she give my character a spell if I met her?
Yeah, she could.
I'm gonna
She
find
could also
her.
take a spell. She could also completely cut you off from magic.
I'm gonna find her and I'm gonna go full bard on her.
The way that I put it is that magic in our world is that magic is a primal beast
Oh,
that
okay.
runs around wild, and she's its tamer.
Ah, okay.
I just really love that dynamic of
Yeah.
like magic is its own thing, but like I kind of like make sure that it doesn't destroy everything because it's a
That's
wild
very
beast.
cool. Also, since I brought up Frozen 2, this is the perfect time for it. Hey, everyone. Every Tuesday, we put up an episode of the Nerd News podcast.
Yes, we do.
Hosted by yours truly.
Yeah.
You can catch that on Tuesdays. This week, coming up on the 1st of October. Whoa! On the 1st of October
Wow.
is going to be all about the Frozen 2 trailer, PlayStation State of Play, which was whack,
Whack.
and more. So tune in then.
Heck yeah.
On with the podcast, brother.
And let's transition into our next spot that's going to take up most of our time today.
Ba-da-da-da.
Because we didn't get a chance to play Dungeons and Dragons this last week, so we won't be giving a session update. But instead, we have Greg and I have both created 4 questions to ask the other.
Okay.
One from a dungeon master to a player, another from a player to a dungeon master, and we're hoping that these random D&D questions will help you guys with your games if you guys are playing, help you get interested in the games, and maybe help you understand a little bit more about the different roles in Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. And if you'd be interested in seeing this becoming a recurring short series on our show here, go ahead and submit your questions on Twitter at Hungry Bros Pod.
Yeah.
And we'll be happy to answer them during the podcast.
Heck yeah. Greg and I both have a lot of experience with this game, so it's going to be real fun.
Indeed, you much more than me.
Yes, very much so.
I don't even know the rules of the game.
Well,
I just play it.
Well, my specific expertise, I guess you could say, is with 5th edition, because that's how I started Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. Well, also 5th
I've been
edition
playing
is
for-
excellent.
I've been playing for years now, and it's
So.
great. So,
Okay, how are we starting this?
off to D&D questions. Welcome to popcorn questions.
Popcorn questions?
Popcorn questions, because food. you know,
Okay.
Hungry Dungeon.
Yeah.
But I guess we decide who goes for it. We'll alternate back and forth.
Welcome to Tavern Talk.
Tavern talk. I love that.
Yeah. Dude, we're killing it today.
We really
I
are,
feel really
man.
good about I have to break our illusion just a little bit. But I was a little worried about this episode because we had a complete mental breakdown beforehand while we
That
were
was
working.
so
Yeah.
good.
So who's starting this?
Why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay.
Ask one of your questions, and then I'll ask one of mine, and we'll switch back and forth.
Okay,
But there's a couple of terms that I think we should explain.
sure.
Meta.
Meta. I couldn't even put meta into words. Can you explain that one?
Meta, put into words, is basically knowledge that you have as a player
That your character
that your
wouldn't
character
have.
doesn't have.
Or even knowledge that you have as a player that the world wouldn't have knowledge of, right?
Yeah.
It is so as an example that we could use is, let's say we're in a big combat round,
Yeah.
and it's Mackenzie's turn, and I'm gonna tell her, hey, will you ready like a spell trap somewhere else, because I'm going to try and push back one of the other characters into this spot here. And I don't do that in character, and her character can't know that I'm going to do that because my character isn't even close to acting yet.
Yeah.
That would be a perfect example of metagaming.
I think that's an acceptable form of metagaming, because that has to do with like strategic planning with battle.
Would you
which I
rather
accept.
would you rather see that done in character though with free
Yes,
speech?
very much so.
Right.
But that is a type of metagaming that's allowed. So it means that you have knowledge of that as your character, or outside, but you can influence your character. An example of bad metagaming is Greg's character doesn't know any of the gods by name
Right.
in our world, but he does know as a player, as Greg, he knows a lot of the gods and has interacted with them in past campaigns. So bad metagaming would be
Calling out one of these
calling
gods
out
by
to
name.
one of these gods asking for assistance when his character doesn't know who they are.
Right.
That'd be bad metagaming. Power gaming, I think, is another good term.
Yes.
And that means that you're trying to use the game's rules to your advantage to make yourself stronger as a
Right.
character. Or not even as a character, but like, think like a video game player.
I think of Thanos.
Exactly.
I used the rules to break the rules.
Exactly. Exactly. I also consider power gaming. I want to make this super OP item so that I could be stronger than the rest of my party. I think I consider that power gaming.
Yeah, agreed.
I think those are our role players. I guess is a real general term.
yeah,
You
it's
play
pretty
the role
general.
of your character.
Yeah. And then of course DM, Dungeon Master.
Yes.
Player.
Yeah, and I think those are our big terms, and those are going to be recurring in this podcast.
Great.
But yeah, let's get on with Tavern Talk, man.
Question number 1.
Heck yeah.
And this is a general question. I
So
think
this
it'll
is
be
a question from player to DM.
from player to DM. And the question is, what is the hardest thing for you to manage as a DM?
Okay, hardest thing to manage as a DM. Well, I think as a dungeon master, your strength is always going to be in preparation.
Right.
So if you're doing a good job as a dungeon master, you're going to be preparing your encounters beforehand, your battles beforehand, your plot points, your world should be established and built. But probably the most difficult thing to manage is players, just in general.
Just players in general.
Because like you build this world, right, and it works a specific way as a world should.
Right.
And then you throw in your characters, and because the people that you're playing with have free will and they're not like scripted, like most of your characters in a world are basically like AI, you know. And then you have your player characters that at the flip of a coin, they can be, you know what, I'm going to release this guy from jail to, you know what, I'm going to kill this guy in jail. Right. And the only thing that can really separate that is how your player responds and continues to respond to certain things.
Okay.
But because players are always thinking of things on the fly and always thinking of new ways that you haven't thought of, managing how your characters progress through the story becomes a big, big thing because you're trying to build this. You kind of have to build like these. You ever go bowling? And they have like those rails on the side to keep the kids from like going too far off and going in the gutter.
Yes.
You kind of have to do that with dungeon mastering.
Okay.
And you have to build those in your plot and certain side that kind of direct people back to the story at all these different ways.
And I personally find yours to be extremely wide.
Yeah.
So then sort of a tangential question in addition to this is, how often are the paradigms of your world shifting as a result of player actions?
Well, for me in my world, because of my play style as a dungeon master, I like to keep things open. And because 2 out of 4 of you guys are very, very experienced with Dungeons & Dragons, I don't really keep you guys connected to a storyline unless you guys want it.
Right.
So
we're good to just free roam forever.
I create a free realm world that has endless possibility, and you guys can always go through that stuff. And so that makes scripting things a lot easier for me, because then instead of like having to script an entire plot line and make sure that you guys stick to it, I script the big plot points in a plot line.
Okay.
And like the big things that are going to happen. And then I'll say, okay, they're going down this path. This is how it progresses to the next step. Here are the next 2 steps, just in case. If they don't take those next 2 steps, then so be it. We left off at that step.
Gotcha. So then, like, to use our campaign as an example, the siege on Trelevan was a scripted moment of the story.
Yep.
But the time where it actually happened was dependent on when we got to Trelevan.
It was a scripted moment, but because of how experienced you guys you are with Dungeons and Dragons, your choices showed whether or not you were participated in that moment.
So that moment would have happened even if we weren't there.
That moment would have happened regardless of your characters, because the world doesn't revolve around your characters. The world exists on its own. You guys are a part of it. And so there's a lot of more than it is trying to change how the plot works according to your players. It's changing where your players are intersecting with the plot.
Got it. Okay.
And so my plot's going to move forward the whole time.
Right.
And if you guys aren't there to see it, you're not there to see it, but you're going to feel the effects of it.
Right. Okay. And the effects, if we're missing world events, those effects are meant to be incentives to involve ourselves in the plot? Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Because every time that you go through a moment, you figure out, had you guys not been there at Trelevan, and your choices hadn't led up to you guys being there at that moment, you guys would have showed up to a half-burned city.
Right.
And what happened here? This is Jace's hometown, or this is the capital of his country. He's patriotic. He cares about his people.
He works for the government.
He works for the government. Some of his people are dead. Some of his people aren't. There's a state of chaos. Of course, logically speaking, it is an easy and accessible point for the characters, or you guys, to dive into that plot and into that plot line to figure out what's going on. Because often I've found that when you're creating a plot that's worth being played, it's something that's worth listening to even when you're not there.
Right, okay.
Good stories aren't something that you need to experience. They're good. They're something that are worth living through word of mouth.
Gotcha. All right.
Because you think of like Tall Tales and stuff, and there's a reason we remember them. They're memorable stories because they're memorable events. It doesn't have anything to do with the people that were there.
So, without letting me in on the what exactly, has our party felt some of the after effects of the actions or inactions of the other party that's been in our continent as well?
You guys have actually kept. So I run 2 campaigns that exist at the same timeline in the same continent.
Right.
Your guys' campaign has managed to stay with your guys' choices just a little bit ahead of them the entire time.
And you said they take place about a month before us, right?
Yeah, after.
Or a month after us.
A month after you guys. But because of the way that you guys moved with your story and how you guys have done your choices, their actions haven't necessarily affected you because you guys are kind of setting the trend.
Right. So have our actions affected them?
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Absolutely.
Well, and then we had a moment of really close intersection, right? You said as we were leaving the siege of Trelevan, they arrived to it?
Absolutely. And so they wanted to have audience and try to meet Rayana, the princess. But she was gone with you guys.
With us.
And so there goes some of her some of their plans as a party.
Are they chasing us?
They're not chasing you.
Okay.
But they have heard of your location.
Oh, okay.
In the world from a very special character.
Is it the king?
It's not the king.
Oh, it's Pavash.
It's not the Pavash.
Oh, no.
It's even worse.
Oh, no. I remember this from last week.
It's him.
Oh, God.
But let's take our favorite NPC, Scald, for a second. He has done things in the world, and you guys don't necessarily know what he's done. But because of your choices in the game, you guys have felt some of the effects of his actions.
Gotcha.
And some of his actions, the way that I guess like back to the question of like freestyling the story works. Your guys' direct actions, if they're placed in the right areas, can domino affect other things.
Right. Okay.
So some of the things that Scald has done in the world that you guys don't know about are directly linked to your guys' actions and interactions with him.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that was sort of a twofer, but
Yeah.
I think it was good for the sake of discussion.
It really was. It was a
So,
good question. All right.
Your
all right.
your turn now.
My turn. So this is a question for a role player, which
Okay.
you are. How do you separate metagaming and role playing?
Okay, so I said I wouldn't do this, but I have to do this. I've acted for many years. A lot of the times, actually all the times, on the stage. As a stage actor, it's very easy for me to do that because it is a. I know we were joking around earlier that I was gonna say that line in like the really like snobby, as an actor of the stage. But genuinely, it is a balancing act to try and play a convincing character who hasn't gone through a full sequence of events.
Yeah.
When you know the ending.
Yeah.
You know the character arc, right? I have in mind a character arc for my character Jace, right? But I'm not playing my character right now with my perceived end goal in mind.
Yeah.
Right? I'm playing Jace as very much in the moment.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty good at acting based on only my character knowledge. There is a lot of meta knowledge that I know as the player that my character doesn't know, right? So we talked last week about where Pavash is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to jump into our next session and be like, let's go here because now I know that Pavash is there.
Yeah.
Right? That's not what I'm going to do. I'm sticking with character motivation. And I think that's a lot of what it has
Absolutely.
to. I think that's what most of it has to do with, right? Is this is what my character wants to do rather than this is what I want to do. I keep in mind my character. I keep in mind his emotions. So right now, he's got a budding crush on the princess.
Yeah.
He's not going to do anything or he's not going to intentionally do anything that I know would bother the princess, would offend the princess, or would put the princess in danger.
Yeah.
So that's how I can separate the metagaming aspect from it.
So do you think when it comes to like your character's motivations, how do you? I think it's realistic to say that you have out of game knowledge of how the story is working and how
Right.
things are going. How do you use that to influence in a positive way your character's motivations? Because as you're playing through your character, a lot of the knowledge that you come to understand in game is also knowledge that your character knows. you
Right.
know? And sometimes the leaps that you make out of game are the same leaps that your character would make in game.
Right.
So how do you use that? Like there's a good way to use meta knowledge in spurring your character's motivations forward. How are
Yeah.
some ways that you like draw those connections?
Well, and I think it's impossible to distinguish them. I think there's always going to be a lot of intersection between the knowledge you have as a player, and it's going to influence your character motivations, right?
Yeah.
You can try to be as unbiased about it as you want, but just naturally, if I know something as a player,
Yeah.
I want my character to know this.
Yeah.
And I may be... So, for example, I'm going to use a really basic example, which probably isn't the best way to go about it. But say me, Greg, I figure something out about the world, and I want Jace to know about it. Well, luckily, I've created my character to be fairly inquisitive. So maybe I formulate, what kind of questions can I ask
Yeah.
to help my character learn this? Who can I talk to? Who would I keep in mind? And then I try and think, okay, then what's my original question?
Yeah.
Why am I seeking this knowledge? So if it's about Pavash, say it's about this knowledge I have about Pavash, and I want Jace to start learning it. And I think, why would he be thinking about Pavash? And then it goes to, based on my character's history, why wouldn't he think about Pavash?
Yeah.
that was
their
his
friends.
That
They've
was
been
his traveling partner.
for-
That was his
They traveled
friend.
for what? Almost a year?
He saw her naked.
He really did. He
And
thinks
so-
she's really cute.
And so because of that, he would have her in mind, and now he's just thinking,
And then it gives you a reason to pursue that
it gives me a
meta-knowledge.
reason to pursue the Inquisition, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder how Pavash is doing. I wonder where Pavash ended up. Well, I think she went through Ethereum. Who's the authority on Ethereum in my homeland?
Yeah.
Let me go talk to them. Hey, what do you know about this gateway in the desert? Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Where do you think my friend ended up? right? That's how I would go about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good way to bring meta knowledge to your character in a non-damaging way.
Yeah, you find a reason in game, in your character's understanding of the world to support your theory,
Right.
or to support the knowledge that you know.
And this is a lesson that I've taken away from theater as well. Of if you can't find a perceived motivation for your character, for your character's actions,
Then there's no reason to do it.
then why is your character acting?
Yeah,
Why
absolutely.
should your character act?
Absolutely.
So unless I can come up with a legitimate reason for Jace to do something, he's not going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes, being that I play a teenager, I have a really, really good excuse of I want my character to do something, and it's like, why would your character do this? Oh, he's a teenager. He has poor impulse control.
Yeah.
So I have a really good excuse for it just based on my character, but there's always going to be a motivation behind my character's actions.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer, dude.
Thanks. It was
Super
a
cool.
little long-winded, but we got there. So was the last one, yeah.
Yeah, it's Hungry Dungeon, man.
So such is the way of podcasting.
We're talking about some good questions, too.
This is true.
If you guys have questions, go ahead and leave them in Twitter.
At Hungry Bros Pod.
Ooh.
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
All right, shoot me another question. I'm ready.
Okay. So this is sort of building off the last question of what's the hardest thing to manage?
Yeah.
Players. Okay. So how will you adapt a story when the players don't take the assumed path? So I would assume that when you lay out a plot, do you have assumptions in mind of, I think they could do this, this, or this?
Yes.
What happens when your players do none of those things?
So, all right, this is where you get into like really weird stuff with DMing. Because if it's kind of like being a dungeon master is like running those. You chose this. Turn to page 27. Make a choice. Okay, turn to page 5. You know those old like choose your own adventure books.
Yes.
It's the same kind of thing. And a lot of the time, when I have an encounter that has to do with a plot line, I'll plan out maybe 3 or 4 things that you guys could do and how that'll connect and change and influence the plot.
Very good.
And if you prepare enough, you rarely have moments where your characters catch you off guard.
Okay.
Or where your players catch you off guard. But when they do, I don't really have an answer for it because it's the moment where, hey, you did this thing. This happened in in my last campaign with the other group.
Oh, okay.
I planned out this whole dungeon, and
you told me about that.
I planned for everything, but they added a new player character that session,
Right.
to take in with them to the dungeon, and in a moment he solved there's this character who had been guarding the place for thousands of years, and he had his heart. The person who owned the dungeon had his heart in a box. They found the box. They can obviously tell this controls the guy. We can do whatever we want with him. Me knowing my characters, I knew they were either going to try to charge him for it, or they were going to try to make some deal, in which both ways the character would have been hostile towards them.
Right.
But this new character, this new player character, what he decided to do, he took it out of the hands of the other ones while they were still trying to bargain, and just gave it to the guy.
Oh, God.
And said, hey, I know what it's like to be in prison. You shouldn't have to feel that way either.
Just ended a boss fight in a moment.
Ended a boss fight in a moment.
Prevented a boss fight.
Prevented a boss fight. And gave themselves free ride because he had been protecting this entire place and knows the ins and outs. Gave themselves a get-out-of-jail-free card for the entire dungeon.
Oh, they just strolled right through.
Strolled right through, right to the very end.
Oof.
So, what I did, and this is DMs, if you ever get in that situation, this is what I recommend. I pulled up my sheet of paper with all my notes in the dungeon, and I ripped it audibly in front of them. Because I needed them to know what had happened. But it becomes a role-playing thing in, okay, they made this choice. I need to make some really quick on-the-fly decisions with my character's motivations and how he plays into the plot. How does he now respond to these people? Because luckily with DMing, you set the stage, and then everything is response.
Okay.
So if you say this thing, and I have a baseline for what my character is, my character doesn't like when people are mean. You say something mean, okay, he doesn't like it when people say things.
Right.
Now he has obvious response, and so I build those. You build your story as a backboard.
As a backboard, okay.
You build it as a backboard, so then it's always moving forward. The backboard's at different lengths all the time, but when people bounce off of it, it gives a specific response.
Gotcha.
I guess is the best way that I could word that.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, sometimes you just have to like ad lib and okay. Does this? Two questions. Number one, does this action change the course of the plot?
Right.
If it does, how? If it doesn't, what does it change? What does it affect?
Okay.
So you have to go through this like cause and effect thing of here's a domino, it fell over, what did it knock over?
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. Great answer.
Thank you. Let me pull up my next question for you, La Greg.
La Greg.
La Greg.
La half pork.
La half pork. Ew. All right. So I think this is a question that can be very helpful for people who are new to Dungeons and Dragons and that are trying to like play for the first time, or maybe it's their second time, or maybe they just want tips to be better at it. Is it hard to get into the mindset of a character that you play? And if not, how do you do it?
So my method to get in character stems entirely from a voice. My character starts with a voice. And this is true of a D&D character or any character that I'm playing in anything, right?
Yeah.
I've never played a character that talks and sounds the same as me.
Yeah.
There's always some sort of twist, even if it's a non-accented character. Mm-hmm. Like I played Simeon, and this was my halfling, and he did not have an accent.
No, he did not.
But he did have a very different manner of speech than I do.
Yeah.
The pitch was a little bit raised. His speech was a little more ignorant and uneducated.
Yeah, he really was, wasn't he? Oh, Simeon. You poor racist halfling.
Unintentional racism.
Oh, God. But wasn't it?
It wasn't.
But wasn't it?
So this is one of those things. How do you separate the player from the character? Yeah. As a player, it was because I knew it was funny. But as a character, it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
So it all stems from a voice for me. So my current character, Jace, we went through a whole character arc where Mac and Cheese's character, Mimac, where Mimac's character Aaron was all made up and disguised, pretending to be my sister. And Aaron is kind of an idiot and couldn't do a voice performance like a trained espionage rogue could, right? So I had to do several sessions where I dropped my accent completely. And instead of speaking in the Irish accent that my character had, it was just an Americanized English, right?
Uh-huh.
It was very, very, very hard for me to be in character.
Yeah.
Because if I drop the accent, Jace's voice is just my voice.
Uh-huh.
Jace's character voice is Greg's voice with an Irish accent.
Yeah.
So I dropped the accent, and it's my voice coming out of a character, and it made me feel really disconnected from him.
Yeah.
So for me, my method of getting in the mind of my character all stems from the voice.
Interesting. Because me, on the other hand, I have a completely different method.
Okay.
Mine stems from the character's background. So like
Gotcha.
I'll build a character and it's his or her history. And that determines how I can act as my character, because now my character has all of these experiences in their past that affect the way that they make their decisions.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. The decision making and the actions has everything to do with my characters, with their background and with their motivations.
Yeah.
But just at the baseline of how to get in character stems from the voice.
Interesting. That's super cool, man. I love Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah,
dude. I'm getting
too.
super excited about this episode.
My turn?
Yes, it is.
All right. Next question. Noe.
Yes.
What do you hate more? Metagaming or power gaming?
God. Oof, that's a real hard question. Because like I said before, I think there's two types of metagaming. There's good metagaming and bad metagaming.
Right.
And then with good metagaming,
assume I'm saying bad metagaming.
okay, so bad metagaming, you have knowledge, your character doesn't have this knowledge and has no possible way of getting this knowledge, and you're playing by it anyways. Hate that.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Because then that's not trying to play the game. That's trying to be the best person at the table.
Right.
Instead of Dungeons and Dragons isn't a game where you're supposed to win. Period.
Yeah, I agree.
Period. It's a game that you're supposed to play. You know, you're supposed to have fun while you're doing it. And winning isn't necessarily a thing, you know, because even when you lose in Dungeons and Dragons, because you're going through a story, you look back on that loss with good feelings. You know, it's a good memory, even though it's a horrible memory.
And even when you win, there's the next day.
Yeah.
That's what's fun about homebrew, because that's not true of the written modules.
That's true.
You know, they end.
That's true. Not the case with homebrew until you decide, like, yep, these characters are done. They're retiring. And then it's a conscious choice by the characters in game to end the adventure.
Right.
Which is intense
and
in
then
its own
from
way.
there, you know, you can pick the same world and make new characters within it. All of your campaigns exist within the same world.
That's correct.
So,
all of the campaigns that I've ever led and ever DM'd all exist within the same world. And the effects of these parties sometimes are lost to history, sometimes make very big splashes in the history of the world. And that's cool. But I think I'm a little more okay. Doesn't mean I like it, but I think I'm a little more okay with power gaming, because power gaming can easily be counteracted.
Yeah, okay. You get to be a little bit meaner of a DM when you do that, right?
Because, like, somebody's trying to power game. I want to create this great item. Great. You do so in your quest for this deep knowledge. You're going mad. You know, and then I can add these in-character, these in-world things to the character to kind of turn people away from power gaming.
Right, okay.
Or to say, you know what? No, my character wants power. This is a part of his character. And it's a part of his ambition. And then that changes not the character or not the player, but the character's alignment. And that makes a better story.
Right.
You know? So power gaming is usually something that's like, hey, my character wants this thing. Okay, why does your character want this thing? Oh, I just want it. Okay, well, now I'm going to create a reason for your character to want these things. And now there's a reason why wanting this thing has been dangerous for your character.
Yeah, okay.
Instead of, I just know all these things and so I'm doing them.
Right.
And then I just have to hard note, I'm sorry, I can't allow that because you don't know that as a character.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only way to stop metagaming. Where stopping power gaming is, hey, I want to create this intense item.
Right. And my immediate thought goes, well, you could have a lot of fun with a power gaming ploy of like, my character wants more power and he wants to do this for more power. And then if they can't come up with a reason why, me as a DM, I would pay attention to their play style. And what I would focus on are like, what are some of the things they do a lot? And my immediate focus would be on, in the tavern moments of a campaign, is this character ordering a lot of drinks? Okay. This character has an addictive personality. They're addicted to power and it's going to ruin them.
Yep.
You know?
And there's ways to, because power gaming is always something that's done within the context of the game.
Right.
You know? And then there are like rule people. You know, there are people that like, I use loops in the rules so that I could break the rules, you know?
Right. Rule snobs are the worst.
But I mean, rule snobs don't really get a say in Dungeons and Dragons depending on your DM because house rules.
Right.
You know, the bottom thing of the DM of the rule book is dungeon masters can change rules according to what best fits the play style of their group and their world.
Right.
And there go your rule snobs, you know?
Yep.
It's not really something that you really have trouble with. But I definitely say I don't like metagamers.
Okay.
Because there's not really a way to stop metagaming outside of just stopping the player themselves. Of like, hey, Dude, you can't do that. Your character doesn't know that.
Very
That's
cool.
intentionally
Yeah.
breaking the fourth wall of the story.
Very cool.
Can't allow that.
Thank you, Noe-san.
Thank you. Konnichiwa.
You. Bucket.
Yada yada.
Oh.
All right.
Yare.
This is kind of in line with this is kind of in line with the last question that we asked about, like getting in the mindset of your character. But this is again for your newer people and maybe some people who are having trouble with making fun characters.
Yes.
How do you build a character that's worth playing and worth following or watching? A character that's worth remembering.
Okay. So I when I build a character, I need to find my character immediately interesting.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of the times I take inspiration from other sources of media.
Yeah.
Okay? So my first character that I played with you was Pyrus. He was an elemental sorcerer.
Yeah.
Fire.
Yep.
His element was fire. And so I got to take inspiration from a lot of different sources, and already saying this is an elemental sorcerer with fire that he barely knows how to control, that's already really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Then I get to have a lot of fun with it, right? And when I think, okay, so this guy uses fire magic, my brain immediately goes, okay, let's talk about the really cool firebenders from Avatar.
Yeah.
So I took the
Super cool.
I took the rage aspects of Zuko, and I made that part of my character. And then I think, okay, but what are the consequences of being a raging fire? And I stayed in Avatar, and I thought, well, what about in season 1 when Aang is getting ahead of himself and he burns Katara and he feels terrible about it? What if something like that happened to my character, but instead of a friend, it was a sister?
Ooh.
And he severely hurt her.
Yeah.
Right? How do I make that carry on with my character? And then we got to add in the extra element that made it interesting to play as well, or that made the mechanical side of it interesting. Of, okay, because he was just sort of born with magic, not a curse or anything like that. He's also got these weird magical after effects that he can't control at all.
Yeah, because he has no control over his magic.
And we got to land on the wild magic. Is it an archetype?
Yeah,
archetype. Sorcerer. We got to land on the wild magic archetype, where just random after effects would show up. Like for a little while, my character was blue, or my character was covered in grease, and I know you were waiting on me to use a fire spell so that I would burn, but I didn't.
You were so close to, like, you didn't even think about it.
I didn't think about it until after the
session.
session. Yeah. And I go, oh my God, you were trying to burn me alive.
And I didn't do that on purpose.
No, because that was
just what happened when the roll.
That was rules as written, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So with playing characters, I'll take inspiration from just as many different sources as I can. So my current character, he is an Irish assassin. My character's inspiration, who used to wield a short sword and a dagger.
Yeah.
My inspiration from the beginning was Shay Cormac.
Yeah.
From Assassin's Creed Rogue, right? He was an Irish assassin that he fell from grace, and I like his outfit better after he fell from grace, so that's what I based it on. And then it turned into, well, why don't I make the mechanics of it more interesting? And I brought up to you, I go, hey, can we use Industrial Revolution weapons for my character? And you were like, what did you have in mind? I was like, how about a cane sword? And we were like, yeah. And then it evolved in the world and became the signature weapon of our people.
Or of your organization.
Or of our organization, yeah. And so stuff like that makes it more interesting. And I think what can make the role-playing aspect more fun? Because rogues are already fun to play, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What can make the role-playing aspect more fun? Oh, this is a character I played before. Why don't we really, really age him down?
Yeah.
And make him a teenager and see how that does for us. So I think if you're creating a character and the idea that you have doesn't spark a deep-seated joy in you immediately, scrap it, start a new one.
Yeah.
Find a character that seems interesting from the get-go. Don't take a cookie-cutter character and try to make them interesting. Start with interest.
Yeah.
Right? If you think, maybe I'd like to play an elf that uses a bow, and you're like, oh, everybody does that. Okay, do something else then.
Yeah.
You know? Play a orc rogue with all of his points in charisma.
Yep.
That intimidates everyone, right?
Yeah, intense.
You don't see Grognak. Roll for persuasion or roll for intimidation. Yeah.
The guy pisses his pants. And
So
done.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Make sure your character is interesting to you from the get-go. Don't try and make your character interesting. Be invested immediately.
Yeah.
That's your sign.
Mm-hmm. It's the same process with Scald.
Ugh.
I based him off of a villain that I saw in an anime. And then I was like, well, what if this wasn't a villain? What if this guy was right on the line?
Mm-hmm.
And he feels like it.
Yeah. He reminds
to
me
the point where you guys want to kill him every time you see him because he's so unstable.
But we know that we shouldn't, or at least not right now, because we're still unsure of whether or not we agree.
Yeah.
With his actions
and his methods and his methods. So good.
Yeah. So again, I mentioned it last week, but I've been on my Batman kick. But Scald reminds me a lot of Jason Todd, the Red Hood. You know.
Yeah.
You're not entirely sure of his motivations. You're not sure where he's gonna go. You aren't sure if you agree with him or not. So yeah, be interested in your character from the get go. Is my advice. If your character seems boring, kill him off. Start a new one.
Yep. Or don't kill him off.
Or don't kill him off.
Send him off in peace.
Leave him hiding somewhere else in the world. Yeah. Which is what I did in this campaign.
Yeah.
I was playing the halfling and it was really, really fun at first, but it quickly became stale.
Yeah.
So I transitioned over to this other character and it stayed interesting.
Yeah.
Which is the sign.
And it gave enough for me as the DM to create spaces for your character to grow.
Right.
Because there wasn't really a lot of stuff for Simeon to like really grow as a character.
He was older. He was set in his ways.
Yeah, set in his ways, didn't want to change. All he wanted was his one thing. And then once he got his one thing, there's no reason to keep adventuring with him anymore.
Exactly.
You know?
So I think that's also it's not a requirement to make an interesting, fun-to-play character, but consider going on the younger side. Because that allows just more room for growth and wisdom and growth in general.
Yeah, older characters are fun if you know how to role play as an old character.
Right.
So I play a lot of old characters, and most of them are incredibly lovable. Like you just love the character,
indeed, because
they have this. I've learned all of these things, and I know I have all of this wisdom, and I'm gonna act on it, and that changes the way that it causes problems. Sometimes it does things, and then it causes these intense. This action has always worked. Why doesn't it work now? I'm having a crisis now because something that I had a foundation, something that was a part of my foundation, crumbled.
Right.
And that creates this turmoil for characters because conflict in characters is fun to play. Period. Right. I think. You want your character to grow and love and dream and
Right. Cool. That's a great question.
I love that question, dude.
All right, so moving on to my last question. And again, each of my questions have sort of stemmed off the previous. And so this last question connects with the metagaming, power gaming conversation. And the question is, well, actually, maybe not really. So what is harder for you to deal with as a DM? Someone who is too committed to lousy or just bad character motivations, or someone too committed to lousy game mechanics?
I think it's really easy to deal with people who like to do it. It's super easy to deal with people who have to deal with lousy game mechanics. Because house rules.
Right.
That's
overthrow
easy.
it. Yeah.
It overthrows those dirty mechanics. Oh, I didn't think that. Okay, this is my decision. This is how it moves forward from now on. Period. And I also think, and this might just be because I'm a real experienced DM, but I also think it's really easy to deal with players who are committed to like bad character motivations. Because if you're a good enough storyteller, your player characters become invested in your story.
Right.
And then you can't really have a bad motivation when your motivation is exactly what the story tells you to be. If Jace's whole thing is like, all I want to do is have women, I'm 18, I want to get drunk and all these things, and Jace somehow, through his adventures, gets wrapped up in something bigger that's interesting and dangerous and fascinating. You, as the player, want to see what happens with that.
Right.
And so it's really easy to get characters in line with and having good character motivations when you have a story that's worth playing through and a good story. And then what happens to those bad character motivations is they become fun little quirks of the character.
Right. Okay.
You know.
Very good.
So it's finding ways to take the things that your people want to do, people want to do with their characters, and making them fun and interesting, while also giving depth to the character through the way that the world operates around them. You know, take Rock, for example.
Okay.
Gunnar came in. His character wanted to hate little people, right? And he wanted his character to be stupid.
And we evolved that.
And that evolved as he got used to the story, because once he had this moment where he was trying to figure things out with the world, because he's like, wow, this is a fun world. I want to figure out what's going on here. I need information. And then his character spoke normally.
Right, and it became a character
And it
trait.
became a character trait. What once was
than...
my character's stupid has become my character has reverse social anxiety, and he really has trouble speaking well when he's around people he trusts.
Right.
Because he's nervous around them.
And it evolved from a legitimate character mistake that he made into, oh no, this is his character.
Yeah.
And I remember that happening. That was a lot of fun to watch.
And then we had this moment, same thing with him, where his character, now having this trait, has to deal with this thing of like, okay, well, I'm with these people. I have this anxiety being around these people, but I'm still with them. Why am I still with them? And from that question, we were able to have that fight that we still talk about, where we were playing the, what's the song again with the hammer?
Immigrant Song.
Yeah, where we were playing Immigrant Song, right? Because it turned into, hey, you're fighting with these people. What are you fighting for?
Right.
Why do you fight? Was the question, you know? And it turned into something that gave Rock depth.
Yes.
And the same thing has happened with Requise, right? It's not going as quickly, but he's just entering a phase of like, he just wants to be a scumbag and he just wants to be slimy. And he has backstory and reason why he's like that.
Right.
And then I'll drop these little things, and it forces him as a player to make decisions for his character to push that character to grow inside of the story.
Right.
You know? And so now we're seeing that, yes, he's absolutely greasy, but he also has morals.
Greasy Requisey.
Greasy Requise. Requise is greasy, and he'll sell people out for a dime. But how far is that? Where is that line? And we're just now seeing that line of Requise being like, okay, you know what? These guys don't trust me. They really don't have any reason to trust me, but I kind of want a family.
Right. But but at this point, they haven't killed me yet.
Yeah, they haven't killed me yet. What does that say
about them?
To them? And it's starting to change how Requise is acting around you guys.
Right.
Even though you guys don't trust him, because you guys haven't immediately killed him, and you guys are still traveling with him and still trusting him and giving him that chance.
Oh, and I threatened him numerous times.
And those threats forced Matt as a player to decide, okay, I have these motivations that my character has where he's greasy and he just does his own thing and he's selfish. They're being confronted.
Right.
I'm being sharpened. Do I want my character to live?
He had to make that decision. Do I go through a change, or do I make a new character?
Yeah. And so what ends up happening with his character is his character starts to evolve and become something that's where his character things that he was committed to have become quirky traits of his character.
Right.
Rather than motivations of the player.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Super cool. All right. And my last question, and you already answered the previous one, so I'm not going to ask this one.
Right.
But to end our session, and I think this is a question that could go for both of us. Greg, why do you play Dungeons & Dragons?
I think that the easy answer is to say just because it's fun, but I think it's a lot deeper than that. I think for me, and this has sort of just been me as, again, it's impossible to distinguish it. Just me as a character actor, generally, it has a lot to do with escapism.
Yeah.
It is fun to be able to let go of the responsibilities of Greg, and then instead take on the responsibilities of some character, whoever it happens to be. It is almost cathartic, therapeutic, to be able to step out of my own life and into the shoes of sort of an idealized life, right? There are still bad things happening, but it's approached in a way that I know my character can handle what's being dished to him, right?
Yeah.
The real world is a mystery, and so is the D&D world, but you feel equipped because you're a hero.
Yeah.
Right?
Oof. Man, maybe we should learn something from D&D.
Ooh. Be the hero of your own story, friends.
Dude, could you imagine if, just real quick, wholesome hours.
Dude, I was going to say, did Dungeon just go wholesome hours?
Dungeon just went wholesome. Could you imagine how our lives would change if we approached our lives as if we were the hero of our story?
Dude.
Wouldn't we walk into situations so much more confidently and so much more kindly and boldly, knowing that whatever darkness we're facing, we're going to be able to get out
of? I'm going to win because the writer already wrote the next 3 books.
Oof. Wholesome. But anyways, continue.
So I think that's really entirely what it is. It's a form of escapism.
Yeah.
It's a form of catharsis to get to be the hero. And that has a lot to do with me as a pessimist.
Yeah.
You know, I view myself as a speck of dust in the grand universe.
Which is true.
And I tend to view myself as myself and my actions as inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, there's a smaller circle that my actions have huge repercussions with. But the large scale universe is sort of daunting. So it is really nice to be able to step into another universe, and you get to be the hero. You get to be the badass.
Yeah.
You get to be the guy that jumps around and does a flip and then kicks someone's nose off their head, you know?
So specific.
I don't know why that's the specific that I went with. But escapism for me.
All right. That's cool, man.
Nogi.
Yeah.
Burger Nogi.
It's me.
Why do you play D&D? I like to play God.
No. You know, and you know this, I like stories.
Yes.
I've always been a storyteller. I think that's what society's built on, is stories.
Oh, yeah. I mean, history.
Yeah. And I don't know, you know, when I was young, I loved to read and stuff when I was young. Right. And I was always just watching the story. You know, but Dungeons and Dragons is this real unique game where you get to participate in the story.
And create the story in your case.
Yeah, and in my case, you get to create the story. And it's not just...
I suppose as a player as well.
Yeah, and it's not just me, like, creating the story, you know, because I create the setting.
Right.
And I create parts of the plots, but then you guys also create the story with me. You know, because I'm not creating my story. I'm creating your guys' story.
Right. It's creating our story.
Yeah.
It is there's a phrase you use, right? It's joint storytelling, is that what you call it?
Yeah. Joint storytelling. Where I supply the plot, and then you guys supply the movement.
Right. And the character and the
heart.
character
and the heart, and I create the frame, and you guys create what goes in it.
And we're the picture.
Yeah.
Those ducks on the wall.
Yeah. Oh
no way.
It always happens.
No way.
Whenever I turn my head, I always hit my earphones on the mic.
Is it usually towards the duck? Is that what you're usually looking at when that happens?
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Or the TV.
But
yeah, I see Dungeons and Dragons as this really beautiful form of joint storytelling where I can tell a story with the assistance of the people that I'm playing with, you know, and I just love that. You know, it's so communal and it's so creative at the same time, you know?
Right.
Because and you guys see this, you know, it's not about like playing God. It's not about making the big decisions because there's so many times in the game where you guys will be like, "Hey, can this happen?" And I'm like,
"Sure."
Yes. Of course it can happen, you know? Because it's you know, and I don't know, I like games.
Yeah.
I like board games and stuff because, community. But I don't know. I just think it's a super unique form of media that we don't really get to. It's not really represented anywhere.
Right.
Because like you look at a movie, right? You go and you watch a movie or a TV show or a video game, right?
Right.
I'll say video game is separate, but you're watching a movie and you're watching a story, right? When you're a video game, you are the character playing through the story, and that's it. It's just you,
Yes.
Or you have a multiplayer game where you're not playing through the main story.
Let's combine those two.
If you combine both of them, multiplayer, creating a story, when you're playing a video game, your actions don't affect the story.
Right.
Story always happens regardless. What if your actions did? What if together everybody's painting this entire story, this legend of these people together as a group?
I love that.
It's so cool, dude.
Yeah.
And I can't really think of anything else outside of Dungeons and Dragons that lets you really do that.
No, there's nowhere else.
Yeah, I can't really think about it,
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of stigma around, like negative stigma around D&D.
Yeah.
Because of like the past.
Oh boy.
But I really do think this is a really positive creative outlet for a lot of people just to be with each other and tell stories together and laugh and do dumb things without having consequences.
Yes.
And,
well, and here's one like fun little anecdote. Anecdote?
Anecdote?
Is that the right?
I don't know.
Fun little story?
Yeah.
Anecdote? Yeah. Here's a fun little anecdote to leave everyone with. No, you remember our old camp counselor?
Yeah.
Luffy?
Yep.
Luffy, what a guy, right?
Oh, Luffy.
So he teaches here at this high school now. He's the choir teacher there.
Wow. Good for him.
And he started a D&D club there at this high school. And he's got groups of high schoolers that are splitting into parties this coming week of like, well, I want to DM. All right, let's have you try your hand at DMing, and we'll put a few players underneath you.
That's super cool.
And same thing. It's just a wholesome outlet for people to get together and just enjoy a story and enjoy each other's company. So, yeah. On the note of joint storytelling, though, or joints in general, my arthritic knee is not happy that I've been sitting for so long. So I think it's time we get up out.
Yes, it is. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Hungry Dungeon. We're so glad you guys are here. If you guys have any questions, thoughts,
Concerns.
I'm
concerned about you, Noe.
Quips.
Okay.
If you guys have questions that you want to ask us as role players and as dungeon masters, then put them in Twitter and in Facebook at
Hungry Bros Pod.
Yeah. And we have a bunch of social media. You guys can find us on those things that previously mentioned.
Yes.
You can find Greg on his Twitter.
On my Twitter at Fancy Shirt Post.
And his Instagram
at grandiloquent_mediocrity. Come peep my Red Hood cosplay.
Heck yeah. Also, check out on Tuesdays, Hungry Brothers Nerd News.
News.
Next week, we already talked about it briefly at the beginning of the episode, where we're going to be going through the trailer for Frozen 2.
Yeet.
And Sony's State of Play.
Squeak.
Squeak.
I don't know. I went with that.
But thank you guys for diving deep into Hungry Dungeon today.
Peep.
Tune in every Thursday for episodes of Dungeon, and be on the lookout on the social media for more announcements concerning the Hungry Brothers Broadcasting Network.
Tweet.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Beat.